All right, let's get our other Facebook groups in here before it's officially time to go. Hopefully our last show with this computer, but we'll see. And it's going. Let's give it a second to breathe. Coffee sip here while Scott's working the ones and twos while doing the show also. Ah, man, so good. That coffee after daylight savings time hits different. I need a drip or something or an enema. God bless. But welcome in, everybody. It's Monday morning, the 13th, and it's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell, and on the other side is Scott Kennedy. Welcome to Legal Tampering. We're here. Let's tamper the hell out of this legally for the next couple
Military
days.
intelligence, legal tampering, jumbo shrimp. They're all oxymorons.
Yeah, that's we were talking about earlier. I prefer what you called it, just a negotiation window
it's
or
contact
a contact
period. In recruiting,
period.
you call it the contact period. It's not tampering if it's legal. Tampering is, I don't know. Tampering has a negative connotation. I got Ethan's in here. Our resident, our Mile High Huddle law guy is in here. Can tampering be legal? I mean, yes, it's been tampered with, but that sounds against the rules to me. You're not tampering has a negative connotation. If it's legal, it can't be tampering.
Well, you guys are gonna
linebacker behind the ball, behind the line backing.
Well, you guys are gonna tamper with my feelings if we don't get more thumbs up in here. We got Brandon Williams and Amy Allies coming in here. Thank you so much. Always appreciate the thumbs up, the interactions on the show. If you guys like the show, make sure you're clicking the thumbs up on the way in. And Scott, this legal tampering, it's got to be a marketing ploy, right? Like how much we've talked about just how much it sticks in your head, just the way it sets up language wise. I mean,
tampering.
Yeah, I know. Legal. It's like we're here. We've made it, right?
Free beer tomorrow.
100%. Oh man, I said it, everybody. Yeah, it's we're here. We're gonna find out about some big deals today. I feel like typically the first day of legal tampering is when we get the most massive A-list contracts are for the most part announced over the next couple of days. We'll hear the announcements. They're not officially signed. We'll get that second tweet from Ian Rappaport on Wednesday saying like officially signed, but we're going to get news about big A-list free agents, where they're going today.
I think Glynchy could be one of the first ones off the board.
Could be.
He has hinted about he doesn't expect it to take long, which basically says, at right tackle, which basically says, I've already got my deal. I'm just waiting for it to happen. So
did he have illegal tampering happen to have that deal in hand?
I should be able to call your agents. What I have agents for. I love that. It's like, the coach says, Coach, have you? I haven't heard from them. My agent has.
Yeah.
That's why I have agents.
Yeah, without a doubt. Let's say hello to some folks in here before we get the ball rolling. Kevin Gray, good morning, Broncos country, Nick and Scott. Maybe we'll get some news today. There's definitely going to be some news. We'll see if it's Broncos news, though. Ashton Edwards coming in saying, been a while. Glad to see you. You guys are strong. Well, good to see you're doing well, Ashton. Any fun hikes coming up, Nick? Nah, I'm in the resting period right now, trying to get all my hours in and get my ducks in a row for a very busy summer. That's the goal. Work, keep my head down, work 6 days a week during December through April, May, and then from July through September. See ya. I'm a ghost. You won't find me. But we got some good ones planned this year, hopefully. Ethan, always appreciate talking. Guess what Ethan and I were talking about on Twitter yesterday, Scott?
Linebackers.
Getting into it a little bit. There's so many linebackers that are fine, like solid quality in free agency this year, and such a list that God, I can't remember who it was. Somebody who works for, I want to say Pro Football Network or one of the newsbreakers out there. Not Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport level, but like somebody out there who's like a big following on Twitter for football, listed all the linebackers available, and they went 16 names deep, and they didn't even list Alex Singleton.
I'll say Alex Singleton's a good football player.
Yes, he is, and he wasn't even listed. So it's an unbelievable number of linebackers available this offseason. Now, obviously, there's pretty much like the big two, I would say, are Tremaine Edmonds and then Levante David. David's older, also Bobby Wagner. Those are the big three. They're going to get probably pretty good contracts, especially Tremaine Edmonds, just 24 years old. But you don't have to spend big money to get a solid player out there at linebacker. It's kind of becoming even more and more of the running back spot on the defense. I would argue it's more tight end, where there's like Travis Kelce and then George Kittle and then everyone else. It's kind of how linebacker has become in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But David Kilgore, 199, saying, will the Broncos be active today? They'll be active, but that doesn't mean anything will happen. They'll be working and seeing what they can get done.
Yeah, they'll be active. And, again, doesn't mean that you're going to be signing players
Mhm.
at the opening, but you're going to work and they've been active. They didn't, it was obvious. We've been talking about it's going to happen for months. Look at these contracts. The three that we were sure about all happened already.
Mhm.
Glasgow, Darby, Edmonds, I think was the other one that we were sure about happening, cleared up $25 million like that.
Lickety split.
So now the Broncos went from like 16th to 8th in available money per spot rack. So yeah, they've got some money. We've said that all along, that they will have some money to go in and get some guys. Dom comes in. Appreciate you, David. Thank you so much, sir. Dom comes in. He says, "What do you boys know about number 75 from the Jags?" Now, is that Jawan Taylor?
Yes.
So I keep seeing his name thrown around as if he's a big time player. Now, I don't watch the Jaguars habitually, but if and PFF, they can be hit or miss. Like I said, I think I've seen some things I didn't necessarily like with the Broncos. I think they do a really good job with the Falcons, but they have different people grading different teams, so that's not consistent. So take this with a grain of salt. But Jawan Taylor's grades on PFF have been poor for his whole career. Help me out here. And they're willing to replace him. They've replaced him. This is the Jaguars. And they've replaced him with some high draft picks. But Jawan Taylor, why is he a guy for me that I should be really interested in when I'm looking at paper? Because paper says no.
Paper also says no for Dre'Mont Jones, and I would disagree with that. I think watching Jawan Taylor, you're banking on growth and upside there. You see the movement skills, and he also is somebody who I think has enough power to be good in the gap scheme and enough movement to be good in an outside zone scheme as well. And he's still scratching the surface there. He's relatively young. He's a second contract player and 35 and a half arm length. I mean, really good filled out frame. So, and talking about the Jags moving on from him, I heard just, kind of following the market here for the tackles that Jags are going to be competitive for him this season. So they'd like him back, even though they already have an in-house option in Walker Little. So they're not, it doesn't sound like they're just going to let him walk just yet. So he's an interesting one. I really like the tape. Granted, for an offensive lineman, you can watch probably 2 games of a defensive lineman if they're healthy and be like, okay, I know what I have here. Offensive line, you probably need to watch like almost their entire season to understand what they are, because just how often it's the losses, which happen on 1 in 20 snaps that matter so much, 1 in 50 snaps versus the defensive line where you can see those splash plays. So I think he's a good player. I also think that a lot of people, probably, at least me coming into the offseason, thought that you might be able to get Jawan Taylor for 70 to 80%, which McGlinchey / McGarry are going to get. Maybe that's not the case, though, and that would change the slotting for me.
Which would be 10. So let's see, you've got 15 million and you can guarantee to get McGlinchey, McGarry, or Taylor for 15. Who do you take?
I probably take McGarry right now, just because I really am interested in the run game aspect that he brings. I think he's the best run game one for him, and he's also a right tackle, and historically you can scheme to protect that right tackle some. So I'd probably lean McGarry. Also, I think McGarry's been the healthiest of the 3 of those.
I
So
don't remember him missing a game.
and
in 4
McGlinchey's
years.
missed a lot of games, and Taylor fell in the draft because of a meniscus tear that he suffered in 2018. So that's another
McGarry's a
reason.
beast. I mean, you could use some of that in Good Morning Amy. She says, "Good morning, Broncos country," coming on Facebook. So good morning to you. McGarry's a bully, and he hasn't always been the most technically sound, agile. The pass protection, that's where you need finesse. McGarry's a bully. And the Broncos could use some of that. Now, I haven't watched as much McGlinchey. I haven't watched as much Taylor. So that's why I asked you the question. But I can tell you exactly what you're getting in McGarry if he ends up becoming a Denver Bronco. And he's mobile. So when you're using that as an extension of the short passing game, as an extension of the running game, he becomes an asset. We talked about that a lot last year. How come the Broncos don't throw more screens? Because your lineman can't move. You throw a screen out there, and the guys are still on their way to get outside to block for him, and by then it's over. McGarry running down at 6'8", 330 pounds. Just he's I like it. I mean, he's good. He's really good. Now, is he ideal for a drop back set pass offense? No, he's not. And that could keep his price down a little bit. That's not what you want to run anyway.
No. Yeah, you're right. We'll see what the Broncos do here, but they're going to invest in the offensive line without a doubt. Maybe the tackle market they find to be too expensive for their liking, and they go to a bargain bin. Maybe somebody like retaining Cam Fleming. Maybe somebody like a Kelvin Beachum. That's a name I've been hearing to keep an eye out also for as that next tier. But we'll see what happens with them. We got Desmond coming in and saying, why can't Russ restructure his contract to help Broncos bring some dogs and help them? Scott, I'll leave this one to you because I know that we've talked about this before. I know what you're going to say, and I agree with you.
Yeah, there's typically, and this is a good question, Des, because everybody comes in and you hear about this all the time. Guys restructuring contracts all the time to free up cap space. Happens all the time that it's almost become like an automatic. Like, well, everybody should be able to do that. A couple of things need to happen for you to have a restructure. One, you have to have some leverage with the player on, okay, Graham Glasgow, you're owed $15 million this year. You've got 1 year left on your deal. We'd like to keep you, but there's no way we're going to keep you at 15. We can cut you and pay you 0, or you can restructure and we'll pay you the 3 guaranteed we owe you as a signing bonus, and we'll give you a 2-year deal for $5 million. And it just cleared up $12 million in salary cap room. Yay! That's great.
Huzzah.
The key on that is you didn't owe him anything, and you do owe Russell Wilson a lot. The second part of this is usually when you restructure, you're adding years. So that's how you are clearing space, is you're adding years. After the season that you had last year, the last thing you want to do right now is have Russell Wilson guaranteed to be on your team for 5 or 6 years. You can get out of it painfully after this season, but you can get out of it. So next year, maybe if he goes and has a great year and say, okay, this is a Russ we thought we were getting, let's add 2 more years onto his deal. We'll pay off some of what we owe him as a signing bonus, and we'll lower his salary cap hit. The third part of this, Russ's cap hit is nothing. His extension really kicks in next year. He's only got a $20 million cap hit.
Yeah.
You know, so those are the 3 big reasons why you don't. 1, you don't have any leverage with him. 2, because you owe him so much money and his dead cap hit would be massive. 2, you don't want to extend the years that you have to keep paying him. Yeah. And 3, he's got a low cap hit this year. So, Des, it's a good question, and that's why.
Yeah, and talking about how these contracts are set up, guys that would make sense to approach the restructure is somebody like a Garrett Bowles if you are further committing to him. And then also the one that really stands out to me is Justin Simmons. We love Justin Simmons. He's playing great. He's a type of player that I think is going to age gracefully as well, because he's not just relying on being an explosive athlete. Like, he's big, he's long, and he's extremely intelligent. That's not going away as he ages. So that's one where you could restructure his deal. And it means that they have more long-term flexibility. They have more guarantees, and it's harder to move on from that deal towards the end. Like we just saw with Ronald Darby. Let's just use Ronald Darby for an example. You used Graham Glasgow earlier, but the Broncos could have approached him last offseason like, listen, we love you. You've been great. We want to free up a little bit more money. We're going to lower your cap hit for 2022 and then raise your guarantees by a lot for 2023. Well, he gets injured. Then now the dead cap hit on him is massive. And the Broncos would have been in a tough situation to create that cap space. So it's beneficial to the players to do it because it guarantees that money in their pocket. But teams don't want to do that if they have any questions about further committing to that player for years down the line.
Right. They say the salary cap is a myth. It is, as long as you are paying young players who are on the ascendancy. As soon as they become depreciating assets and that cap hit keeps rising, the cap becomes very, very real because you either can't get rid of them or you have to pay through the nose to get rid of them. The Atlanta Falcons had $85 million in dead cap money last year. $85 million in dead cap money. Don't tell me the salary cap isn't real. That was almost 40% of their availability to put on the field. I think we got into this, David. I hope we answered your question on this between McGlinchey and McGarry. Who do we go after? Appreciate you coming in. If you have any further questions on those guys, let us know. But I think we hit this one pretty good a few minutes ago. So thank you so much for the support.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Hello to some folks. Ethan, good morning. Jeremy Sean, happy Monday. Don't tamper with my expectations. We got Mike Gevins coming in. Good morning. Rob coming in. Good morning to you. Kevin saying, make sure you guys hit the thumbs up. G. Travis, happy tampering day, everyone. Mark Hoynak saying a lot of good players about to begin and continue their careers. George Payton shouldn't have any problems putting a quality offensive line in place. I hope. Easier said than done, unfortunately. But what can you do? Bruce Deuce saying, flag on the play. Dave Glassman in the house. Our big star donator here, Michael Ronquillo. Always good to hear from Michael. Killed it last month. Killing it all the time. Michael, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and buck 'em. We got our guy, I think it was probably Kaylee on Green, saying, yo, Nick and Scott.
Real quick, because
yes.
and then come back to Dominique here. Rob came in. He says, good morning. This is the first Broncos for breakfast I've caught live. So glad you could make it with us today, Rob. Appreciate you.
Amazing. Good to see you. Dominique, good to see you. Always appreciate you coming in. Quentin Caldwell, morning, guys. Dom, always in the house. Amy Alley's, she was one of the first ones to drop the thumbs up, so we appreciate that. David Yukin coming in. Yonkin coming in here. Good to see you. Austin, Nick and Scott, happy day. Hopefully a happy day for all of us. We'll see. Don't lose your mind, Broncos country, if the Broncos do not make big waves today. Sometimes the people who win day one of free agency are not the people who end up winning, come February a lot of times. So we'll see how it plays out. The really great players that are getting big contracts, teams don't let them get to this point. So you have a lot of, tier 2 players getting tier 1 money the first day of free agency, typically. So we'll see. It's really we'll be talking 2 weeks from now when some of these signings are, I think, some of the biggest ones that'll be the values that you're going to be excited about in the year from now. Like, how did that guy get signed for that much? Well, that's the bargain ones that you got to find. And that's where your pro personnel scouting really has to come into play.
Dan, I just read Mandego Dan's comment, and he says, you kids and your crazy time changing. I'll be on time next week. I thought that was done, but I guess that didn't actually pass both houses and become a law. I thought we were done springing forward, but I guess it's still a thing. Actually got to, because of the weather, I was supposed to get up and have a soccer game in the morning. It got pushed back an hour, and then today and tomorrow, my kids are out of school. I'm like, man, that's how you spring forward. Good Lord. Yeah. That was perfect. Got to ease into it. And then my cat's still up at the same time, though. Hey,
yeah,
wake up.
That's true.
Feed me. Dan Wilkins says, free agency for running back or draft. Free agency for running back or draft a running back. I actually prefer the drafting of a running back as opposed to free agency. I think you've got a little bit more upside there. The cheap guys that you can get in free agency can do a job, but you can really hit it big in the later rounds of free agency. I'm going to use Tyler Algier, and there's, Pachenko. You could use him for Kansas City. You've got 4 years of control for Tyler Algier, who rushed for 1,200 yards last year instead of franchise record in the 5th round, and he was a $770,000 cap hit this year. He maxes out at like 1.2. Unfortunately for him, he won't have generational wealth in his first contract, and he might be used up after 4 years. But you know what? That's not your problem. That's, hate the game, not the player. Yep. So I prefer personally free or running to go after the running backs to draft one and take one every year, Nick.
I'm a every other year draft kind of guy with that position. But I think for the Broncos this season, it's a free agency and draft proposition. I think you're going to have to pay somebody, not a lot, but something where it's short term, like a 2-year kind of deal for 6 per, and with a lot more guarantees in that front year, just for Javonte Williams insurance, because you need to come out of free agency where you feel okay with whatever running back you have starting next year, because you cannot go into the 3rd round or the draft where you're picking so late and be like, well, we have to come away with a starter here. Just with how this game is set up, with how Sean Payton uses the running backs, I think you have to have at least some ability there. Now, I'm not saying reset the running back market. I'm not saying pay $10 million a year, but something, $4 to $6 million a year for 2 years, where that second year is essentially a team option. Yeah, and you can find a good enough running back in that market where you can be okay with that for 1 season.
Keith asks, he says, is it wrong for me to be more excited about coaching current players than the addition of new players? No, it's not, because you've got a good roster. Expectations were high last year for the players that were there. Now, it should make you a little bit more nervous with some of the losses that you're having. Especially on the defensive line. It's like, okay, I'm going in last year with Dre'Mont Jones, with Bradley Chubb, with Randy Gregory. Man, I'm excited. Bradley's gone. Dre'Mont Jones could be on the way out. Randy Gregory, you never know what you're going to get. It was nice having 3 of those guys to rotate in and out for that type of thing. So and And then it's like, how can I replace those players? I can't go out and get a super edge. If you have that number 5 pick, I know. But there is a little bit more, I think, expectations. But between the results last year and what you saw from Russell Wilson and some of the losses that you're having on defense right now, I think expectations compared to last year's Super Bowl of bust will be much more tampered.
Yes. Uh-oh.
See, it's a negative. We're tampering again, Nick.
Hopefully it's legal. Oh, we got that one already. I wanted to get David Yukon saying, will we be aggressive or not? I think the Broncos are going to be aggressive in the right tackle market. From what I have, putting together, I think that they will be in on the deals for Jawan Taylor, Caleb McGarry, Mike McGlinchey. I haven't heard him as much as the other two, but I think they will be aggressive with that tier because I think the Broncos want to walk away with a solidified player at right tackle. That signing probably means that this is the last year of Garrett Bowles, but I digress. That can be a next year problem when it comes to that. But I think they're going to be aggressive with right tackle. If they miss that tier 1 group of right tackles, though, I could see them punting on almost everything else as far as tier 1, tier 2 players. I just think it's because I don't think they believe they can get a starting caliber right tackle or tackle at all with where they're picking right now. I feel like they feel a little bit scared of that proposition. And I also don't think they are in a spot where they can give up draft capital to move up and go get a guy. So they probably want to try to walk away with the one in free agency.
Lawrence comes in and says, what's up, guys? We have so many holes. We look like Swiss cheese. Part of that is your tunnel vision for your team, because everybody loses like 20 free agents every year. Most teams have a lot of holes that they're trying to fill. Now, let's look at this as a team, and it's okay. Where are your big holes? Your big holes are really from last year. Well, quarterback could be one. That's a scary one. Let's push that one off to the side. But they were really interior lines of scrimmage, kind of both sides. That's not overly expensive to get better. And I've said that for a year now. I can get better at left guard and center for relatively cheaply. Appreciate the stars. Lawrence is coming in and breaking the ice on stars. Nick, I looked something up yesterday. Because I was real interested in this. Because Spot Rack has that best value now, and I really like it. Maybe it's been there for a while. But I went and clicked on best values for center. And the 10 best values for center, Kansas City, Philly, Cleveland, Miami, et cetera, the records for the teams with the top 10 centers was 95 and 74. The record for the teams with the 10 worst centers was 72 and 95. Now, I haven't done that with every position. You could probably do that and say, okay, well, yeah, the better teams were graded highly across the board because it's a team game, especially on offense and a unit. I think the center position's underrated. I really do. Because they're the captain of your offensive line. They're calling out all the checks. They're doing all those things. I really think the center position is underrated. The top 2 rated centers, 14 and 3, 14 and 3. The top 2, the bottom 2 centers, 3 and 13, 4 and 13. There was one winning record, I think, on the bottom 10 centers. It was the center position for me, Nick. It's underrated. I believe that.
It's a weird one because it's not the one that's most based on size and athleticism. It's intelligence, processing, technique. So
it's the middle linebacker of the offense. It's when you've got a good one.
Yeah.
They're not the body type like you're saying. It's not overly hard to find. 6'2", 300 pounds. Those guys are everywhere. But or on 6'2", 240. On inside linebackers, those guys are everywhere. But by God, when you've got a good one.
And the Broncos have not had a good one since probably Matt Paradis before his injury started to catch up. We got David Kilgore. Any chance we can trade for Ryan Ramczyk from New Orleans? I just don't know if the Broncos are in a position to be trading top draft capital. If you're trading for Ramczyk, you're probably talking about that first round pick in 2024. If not, both your 3s this year and a 2 next year or something like that. So I can't see the Broncos going in for Ramczyk. I think they're going to go hard after the right tackles that are available in free agency right now and then pivot from there. Also, you have David coming in saying Ryan Kelly from Indianapolis is available, would be interested. If the Broncos can trade for a player with one of their 5th or 6th round picks, one of those kind of trades, then I'm ears for it. But your 2 third-round picks and your 4th-round pick, you're just not in a position to deal right now with where you're set up.
Yeah, Ryan Kelly was okay. He wasn't great. He kind of went backwards a little bit. I feel like the Colts are going to be very similar to the Broncos. They had very similar years last year on the whole. They're going to be interested in seeing what they can do with new direction. I feel like let's see what these guys can do with better offensive coordination, better offensive line play, better quarterback play. In theory, Shane Steichen and a fresh set of ideas, because they had the highest paid offensive line in football last year, and they were bottom 5.
Yeah.
What's worse than being expensive? Well, being expensive and being bad. What's worse than being bad? Being bad and expensive. So they've got a bunch of money in their offensive line, and I think they're going to want to do that. And like Nick said, I don't see any player for player trades. And maybe you can, I can throw somebody a 7th because I want to take on that. They want to dump the contract.
Yeah.
But I just trading right now, incoming seems like a little bit of a stretch. I think if there's trades, it's going to be outgoing, Nick.
And I think outgoing trades make it more likely that incoming trades could happen if you're getting the higher capital. Let's say you trade, just for example here, nobody get irritated, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but Sutton for a 2. Then you end up trading your 5th-round pick for an offensive lineman or speed wide receiver. There's so much smoke right now for the Broncos prioritizing looking for a home run hitter at wide receiver, to the point that it's the people who are being fed from the organization that are talking about speed at wide receiver. So I think there's something there to that. But Gary Palmer, good morning, Broncos for breakfast. Love the show.
And hey, Gary, let's hit Gary real quick. Thank you, Gary. Says, good morning, Broncos for breakfast. Love the show. We love you too, Gary. Mile High Huddle for life, and hashtag Buckham with a big B. We talk about speed. What about KJ Hamler? KJ Hamler has 600 yards receiving in 3 years, and he's been hurt a lot. You can't count on him. Jalen Virgil can fly, but he's not a polished wide receiver. He's a project. So why are the Broncos looking for receiver help when they've got these guys? Because they don't have these guys. These guys haven't been contributors. They need something else. They need KJ Hamler to be the guy they drafted, and you can't count on that happening right now.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I didn't know if my internet kind of dipped there for a second, Scott, but just a note for you guys out there. New computers on the way with processing. I think Scott and I figured it out. Scott picked a new system for me. So hopefully Scott, we're all holding you accountable to that.
I feel good. Well, the boat anchor that you're using right now can't get much worse. I almost said you should, I almost talked you into just hooking up your phone and using that to watch the chat, because your phone has a lot more processing power than that computer. I promise you.
Unbelievable. But thank you so much, Gary. We appreciate you. Another $9.99 coming in. Montana Altitude saying, morning, guys. Appreciate all the knowledge from the show. Looking forward to a new season with a healthier, well-coached team. Yeah, I've been writing like a madman, Scott, on this piece of junk of all things. But no, the Pro Football Outsiders, who, we love to reference their DVOA and their advanced stats and everything, and their per possession statistics too, that we like to reference here instead of the full game stats. But they had one come out. They had a adjusted games lost last season, and the Broncos were far and away the number 1 most injured team in football last season. Not a shock there, but they were so far away that I think the gap between the adjusted games lost for the Broncos and the number 2 team was bigger than the gap from like the number 2 to the number 6 team. So the Broncos stood alone last season. Let's say even on paper, this team looks equal to last season or worse. And let's say the coaching even from last year was the same. You'd expect to tick up next season from a positive regression standpoint from the injury load, and not even the 1 possession games also. So this is really I'm not expecting playoffs or anything next season, but all the variables that are seem to be the coin flip 50-50 ones, Broncos kept rolling snake eyes last season. Yeah. Hopefully we'll get a little bit better luck this year.
See, you got to bet to lose like I did in craps, and I cleaned up. RJ coming in. He says, Broncos for breakfast, by far my favorite. Not by far. I think I added that. Sorry. Freud says there were no accidents. My favorite Mile High crew. Haven't been able to catch y'all live in a while. Appreciate you being here, and thank you for the super chat, my friend. Hoping for a strong free agency. Peyton about to go to work. Yeah, there's money to be had. We talked about that. This team doesn't have any money, and they're stuck with Russell Wilson. Who would want to come coach this team? Bollocks. It's the Denver Broncos. You got plenty of money. You got owners with deep pockets. It's a premier franchise in one of the most prestigious sports leagues in the world. you're not going to have trouble getting a coach, and you didn't. Free agency, they will follow the money. Sean Payton will help. People will believe in that, but it comes down to, for the premier free agents, really, it comes down to money. Where am I going to play? How am I going to get paid? Then let's work down the list from there. So I think it should be really fun. Appreciate you, RJ.
We really do appreciate you, RJ. Everybody coming in. We appreciate all the people. Appreciate Dom and Keith celebrating the new computer for me coming in. Hopefully it'll come in soon. I had a panic moment a little bit ago that maybe Chad sent it to my old address, but hopefully it's going to be better.
I couldn't help it, Darius. I'm sorry. I that's the last person in the world I'd want to be, unless we're talking bank accounts. I wouldn't mind having his just 1 month of his bank account would be nice. But he gave me Skip Bayless vibes, banging on the table. I heard myself do it, and I didn't mean to. Apologies. It was organic. It wasn't fake.
Skip. No, I'm just sorry. Start talking with a lisp in here, like our guy Shannon Sharp, who I adore. I love Shannon. No disrespect on using the lisp there.
Chad said last night his job has been editor for Nick Kendell.
Well, hopefully it's not too much editing having to go, but I've been on a absolute tear on the writing here recently. And he also just published my second mock draft 2.0. So you guys can head over to Mile High Huddle if you want to check that out. I went very trench heavy on that, and I wanted to get one out before free agency, because if the Broncos pay for a big time right tackle, then that might change things a little bit for them there. But talking about that, paying for a big right tackle, Scott, and all this wide receiver talk, I think we should talk a little bit at least about some of these wide receiver options mid-round. I know that we're very draft oriented and you guys can steer off of that, but just wanted to throw out some names for you folks. Round 3, round 4 for the Broncos. If the Broncos do bring in a big right tackle, or just in general, they're looking for speed at wide receiver. The names that are sticking out right now to me, we'll see what happens with him in this cycle. It seems like the NFL draft media focus is much higher than the NFL teams on him, and that's Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee. He's a vertical play threat. He didn't test like an absolute burner, but he was a burner at Tennessee, and the dude wants nothing to do with press coverage. He's been asked about where he wants to play at the NFL. He's talked about playing slot. Tennessee did everything they could to get him from getting against press, so he might fall to the Broncos range. I think it's actually a real possibility there for the Broncos. Another name to keep out as far as a small speed kind of guy, Nathaniel Dell is the name I would keep an eye on. Tyler Scott. Tank Dell, name to keep an eye on. I think Tyler Scott is actually the one that I have circled the most right now for them, but keep an eye on him as well. Marvin Mims from Oklahoma tested very well. He's kind of a smaller down the field speed threat. And then the final one I wanted to mention was Trey Palmer, who I believe had the fastest 40 of any of the wide receivers this year in Indianapolis. Transferred former 4 or 5 star wide receiver from LSU to Nebraska and had a really great season for the Cornhuskers last year. So there are speed options for the Broncos in the draft in the round 3, round 4 range that if they sign an offensive tackle in free agency, makes a heck of a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was Trey Palmer was 4.33. He was the fastest of the 40s guys. He was a Senior Bowl guy. And what's interesting to me, that's him at the top of the screen, I believe, is at the Senior Bowl, he didn't seem like a speed guy. Or did I have, Trey Palmer, Nebraska. Yeah, that's him. He was making good routes. He seemed almost like a possession guy. Okay, well, a possession guy that's running 4.33. Okay, well, I'm real interested in him. So Trey Palmer, will he still be around in the third? It's interesting to me that a guy with good hands, good route running, all this type of stuff, running a 4.33 could possibly be around in the third.
I've heard fourth. I think he's possibly a 4th round guy even. There's a cluster of smaller speed guys who are more wide receiver 2, wide receivers 3s that are going to be available. So it's interesting.
He was 6 foot 192. I bet that's real similar to what KJ Hamler was coming out at the time.
I think KJ Hamler's smaller.
Okay, but similar.
Yes.
But yeah, someone to watch there. And again, I absolutely love Jonathan Mingo. Just when you want to he's not the speed guy. But he's, and let me put some, now that I've got a lot of these done, it's taken, I'm a little bit farther behind than usual. I think I've got about 35 videos up now on my channel. You can see it on there. YouTube.com/Scott Kennedy. Jonathan Mingo is 230 pounds and has sticky hands, and he went 4.46, I believe. 4.46. He came in at 6'2", 220. 10.5-inch hands, and you can see it. I mean, the ball just swallows the ball when he comes in. But when you talk about guys that could be in that Deebo Samuel role, 6'2", 220 pounds. I think this is the one against Julius Brents, maybe. No, not him. He had one where he was the only guy beat. Look at the legs on this guy. You can use him in space in a short passing game. Here's him blocking. I put that one in there just for you, Nick, as he's running, taking care of the edge there.
Love it.
Almost as an inline tight end. So another guy I really want to watch is Mingo.
Yeah, different type than the speed one, but if you want to get to ball to a thick, stocky, kind of big slot in space, there's an emerging role for that kind of guy in the NFL, especially if they can block out of the slot. Being able to have a wide, it's kind of like, why would you play a linebacker in the slot in coverage when you can play a defensive back? Why would you play a tight end in the slot if you have a wide receiver who's more athletic, better with the ball in their hands, that can then dig out a linebacker or a safety in the run game? I mean, Cooper Kupp's. Go ahead.
He's a matchup nightmare in the slot because he's going to bury a defensive back. And he's going to bury a defensive back in the running game. Just bury him. I mean, that was a defensive end that he was blocking on that clip I just showed you. And again, that's Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss. And okay, well, we need to load up to stop the run, and he's coming in motion, and then he's in the slot. Okay, well, if I see a linebacker on him, we're audibling. Yeah. We're going to get to the line with more than 3 seconds left on the play clock, and we're going to audible.
You'd hope. Shane Hanna coming in. Good morning, Broncos country. Free agency is here. Legal tampering's here. Jesse's saying last 4 articles last night. Nick enjoyed the reads. Yeah, sorry, Scott. Or sorry, Chad. I know that he's been editing my articles a lot. Hopefully, again, not too much. And yes, Keith giving Scott a shout out. Puts out great videos, and you want to check them out. Yeah, Scott gets huge numbers from those after the draft as well. Guys looking up players when they get selected. So it does a great job of cutting those. And he
all
owns
the names
those
in the new Philadelphia Eagle receiver, Jonathan Mingo.
Yep. I mean, you own those videos, so it's worth it. That's great. But yeah, no, let's get into it a little bit more. Jeremy coming in, maybe he's one of those guys that are fast.
This was on
Palmer.
Yeah. And again, I don't know how much I got to see of him, but there were only 3 clips in there that I think were live against against defensive players. And, they call it deceptive speed. I usually turn around and say, yes, he's got deceptive speed. He's slower than he looks. That's kind of the joke about the deceptive speed guys is he is fast, but he's under control. So he's a good receiver where he doesn't have to do everything fast. Where we're talking about Jalen Virgil, who doesn't have the nuances of how to break down and come out of all the stuff that he needs to learn. Trey Palmer already has. Now, I don't think he's going to run like Jalen Virgil. Jalen Virgil's like an Olympic track guy. But 4.33 is still fast. And he is a receiver. He is a receiver who is fast, not a fast guy playing receiver.
Trey Palmer, dagger in my heart. The week 12 game last season, Iowa, Nebraska, and he has 9 receptions, 165 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 18.3 yards per reception. He's average for the year was 14.7. So he's a vertical guy out there with some refined ability. So I think you can really find some interesting speed threats that could help this Broncos wide receiver room. And again, you have people who are really connected to this Broncos team as far as the reporting side talking about speed at wide receiver. Mike Kliss mentioned it multiple times. Troy Rank has mentioned it many times. Ben Albright keeps talking about speed at wide receiver too. Read the signs, guys. I mean, that's something that this is being somebody connected to the team has said the Broncos are interested in speed for this team to have all these people who are, newsbreakers for the Broncos talking about it.
Yeah, Jackson Smith and Jigba is not going to be there.
No.
I'm like, speed guy, okay. He didn't run his 40, but his 6.57 shuttle. Holy cow.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
That's for your Elkhorn, that is maybe the best drill for translating to route running because you're changing direction on the fly instead of a shuttle is a stop start. That's for me. That's more for trench play and inside linebackers. The Elkhorn is good for everybody, but it really translates well for wide receivers and corners.
Yes, it does. And circling back around here to Mike Kliss, he did an article here recently talking about free agency of 9 free agents that the Broncos could consider this upcoming draft cycle. And guess what, Scott? The first 5 players listed, or first 4 players listed, what positions do they play? What unit are they?
I'd go offensive line.
offensive line for the Broncos
I
here. Number
mean,
one, go ahead.
Kliss follows the team, not like some of these national guys.
And
I mean, if you follow this team, you got to go OL or, or maybe DL. But if I'm saying, okay, I'm not going to get 5 of those, I'm not going to get all 5 of them, but these are my targets. And then once I get 2 of them, okay, then I move on, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, without a doubt. That's the one that makes sense. And who do you think Mike Kliss's number one player is? Somebody that we've talked about at length over the last hour.
It would be McGarry or McGlinchey. I say McGarry.
Yep. He
Caleb
has
McGarry, Atlanta Falcons, who the Falcons did not tag. Played 3 years of bad to mediocre football. Second year in a run-heavy system, and Arthur Smith and the coaching staff in Atlanta really broke out last year. And the guy's he's a bully. We've said for years that I've said the last 2 years that this Denver Broncos team was soft in the trenches. And I'm not saying the players are soft, scheme, preparedness, whatever. They were getting bullied in the trenches, both sides really. And McGarry helps change that right away. It's a totally different mentality. Not only game days on Sundays, but in practice. You better show up to practice and bring your big boy pants. Or I mean, he looks like a WWE guy. If Brock Lesnar had hair, it might look like McGarry.
Yeah, and McGarry, he's been in buyer beware articles all offseason because of the concerns with his pass blocking and how the scheme he played in Atlanta. But if you're looking for a guy who can be not to be cliche, but a tone setter in the run game, a physical player, then he's one. And Kliss writes about it. He's the best run blocking right tackle in the NFL. McGarry could really be a road grader, 4-year starter, has missed only 3 games in his entire season.
Yeah, we talk about while you're
4-year starter at right tackle. So he has a lot of experience.
While your computer's catching up real quick, the durability there. We said earlier, I don't remember him missing a game. So 4 years, 3 games. So 4 times, we'll call it 16. What's that? 64 games. Missed 3. Let's see what that curse is in Denver. He comes to Denver, signs him, and he misses half the season. No. But I'd be real interested in signing. We said Jawan Taylor. Well, he's never played right tackle, and he's been injured a lot. Stop it. Stop bringing in guys that are injured and then be shocked when they're injured.
You mean Taylor Lewan?
Taylor Lewan. Who did I say? Jawan Taylor. I meant Taylor Lewan. Yes. Absolutely. Thank you.
The other names here listed for in the article. Interesting from Kliss here. I don't see a single center listed in the article, but he lists Ben Powers, left guard from Ravens, Isaac Semialu, somebody that, I've mentioned him as my number 1 hope for this. Number 3, McGlinchey, number 4. And then after that, we get into a little bit of the defensive trenches. But Ben Powers and Isaac Semialu, the main interior offensive lineman listed here by Kliss.
You got to have a center, Mike.
Yeah.
You just have to. You look at, for whatever PFF rankings are worth, I think there were 36 eligible centers for their rankings, and the Broncos had 2 of those. And they were like 29 and 32 in the NFL in Glasgow and Cushenberry. And, my question is, how'd they ever get to 29? I'm joking a little bit, but use your eye test and the PFF rankings to kind of trust but verify. My gut rankings tell me that they weren't good enough. And you're in year 3. Can they make that jump? I'm okay with Lloyd being back, but by God, you've got, now that Glasgow's gone, you have to bring somebody else in. You don't have another center. Or did they bring in that guy last year from Washington? Who looked the Washington guy they took in the 5th round.
Wattenberg.
Yeah, Luke Wattenberg. He didn't look ready to go. So you've got to bring in a veteran or draft a guy that has some significant upside. You can get better at center for pretty cheap, in my mind.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. But interesting to list 2 left guards. Also, 2 left guards that many people have about equivalence as Dalton Reisner, according to the market value. But we'll see how it plays out for them without a doubt. But center, I mean, that's my biggest concern on the offense as far as the actually running back on the immediacy is the biggest concern. But that's easier to replace, I think, than anything else.
And speaking of buyer beware, Nick, I mean, you're seeing $9 and $10 million valuations on Dalton Reisner. I've said 2 to 2.5 is what I would offer him, which is middle of the road offensive guard money, starter money.
Yeah.
That's not an insult. 2.5 million will get you, will be 30th ranked offensive guards. Well, there's 60 starters, so it's right there in the middle. You spend $10 million. If anybody comes and asks me what I think about the new signing Dalton Reisner at 10, I'm going to say you were robbed.
Yeah, I think he's going to get between 6 and 8 million per year over 3 to 4 years. I think that's what the market will dictate, but who knows? I mean, teams are desperate for offensive line, and it's not a very good interior offensive line free agency class, which should be a benefit to Reisner. We got Shane coming in saying no on Reisner. Jesse asking, what about Calvin Anderson? Why hasn't he made the next step? Undrafted free agent and offensive tackle. Not every single guy is destined for stardom. The Broncos tried really hard to give him a runway for right tackle last season. A lot of snaps out there at right tackle, and he struggled enough out there that they went out and signed late in the process Cam Fleming, who ended up being the Broncos' best offensive tackle to play a snap last season, and that includes Garrett Bowles, in my opinion, who was not.
You mentioned great. The next step. What is the next step for a guy for an undrafted free agent at tackle who had? And here's the thing, I just looked him up. I was like, well, what was his RAS, his relative athletic score? It's good. It was actually pretty good. I mean, his height and weight he's a little undersized, 6'4.5", 292. But what I see here, Nick, and I'll put this, I can share this screen and I'll drop the link in the chat as I'm looking at this. But what I see here is a guard, Nick. For body type and stuff.
I don't know if he plays with enough power.
Yeah, because he's strong. He's 6'4.5", good shuttle, good 3-cone, good agility. I don't worry so much about the 40. But for here's his link in there, y'all. If you're looking after the fact, if you're listening to this afterwards, his height and weight for a tackle is not good. If I change this to offensive guard, I bet that red starts to turn yellow. And then he's got a 9.52 relative athletic score. Now, again, this is just looking at him and saying this is just raw numbers. Yeah. But by God, there's enough data back there that the raw numbers usually pan out. There's very few exceptions that someone should have made this dude a guard in college.
He's about 30 pounds light for my guard takes. You're looking for about 320 there and that 290. I'm curious if he has the frame.
Yeah, 292 at the time. Yeah. But I bet he could play at 315. It's not hard to put 20 pounds on a 300-pounder.
Yeah, you hope so. With good weight at the same time. But his tape does not show guard to me. I just don't see the ability to displace guys at the point of attack. I don't see the power in the punch. But and also the fact that he has struggled at right tackle as well makes me wonder about some of the technical aspects of playing, because he's like, he's much more comfortable at left tackle, but he's a backup left tackle.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense unless you've got a disability. Bob Whitfield was he great from Stanford. He only had one eye. He had to play one side of the line, so it's not that extreme, but nobody's better at left tackle than right tackle.
Some guys are.
When you're coming up, you always put your best offensive lineman at left tackle. That's how it is.
Not to be anecdotal on this one, but just a case on this for the Broncos, or for me, being the Iowa guy in here. Tristan Wirfs, only ever right tackle for the University of Iowa. He was really good at left tackle when they played him. The Iowa Hawkeyes had a now starting tackle in the NFL, Alaric Jackson, who was significantly more comfortable at left tackle than right tackle. So in order to get the best 5 out there, it was the math came out where they were playing Alaric Jackson at left tackle and Tristan Wirfs at right.
It's probably the only place he's ever played. Yes. Is my point. He's only ever played left tackle, and it took, there's some nuances in there, but again, it's typically you put your big guys on defense first. If they're not good enough, if they're not athletic enough there, you try them at offensive tackle. If they're not good enough at left tackle, you move them to right tackle. If they're not good at right tackle, you move them to guard or center. If they're not good enough there, they're not playing. That's just the progression of body types and athleticism. So it's an exception to hear a guy, well, he can't play right tackle, but he can play left. What?
It's a comfort thing, and the tape also bears it out. It's weird. It's look.
A lot of guys don't want to do it for a financial thing because of I'm not a guard. I'm a tackle.
Yep.
because the guards are a dime a dozen.
Yeah. Wrapping up this Cliffs one here, just want to point out a few more names. Scott, so offensive line, the first four listed players here on the list. What's the next position that takes up the next 3 spots?
I need defensive line one way or the other.
Defensive
But
line. Yep.
I need some help at edge. I've lost Chubb. I could lose defensive line. So just front 5 for me across that front 5. I've lost an edge. I could possibly be losing Dre'Mont Jones. Deshaun Williams is a free agent, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Mike Purcell could be a cap casualty.
Yeah.
You know, I'm I'm running out of fingers here.
Yeah.
I need help on the trenches. The priests have their coaching shirt. You know, Nick and I, probably me more. I don't know, but for me, it's trenches.
Mine is a POV, position of value, right?
Yeah.
No jokes in there, but leaning into the
I got that reference.
But the interior defensive line is next for the Broncos. Larry Ogunjobi, listed number 5 here. He is the one who failed the contract with the Bears last year, right? Like the Bears signed him day 1 of free agency, signed him to a massive contract, and he failed the physical. I think he failed the physical there. So
perfect. Sign him up. Sounds like a Denver Bronco already.
A 1-year deal might make some sense for him. We'll see. They list also Greg Gaines, who's much more of a nose tackle. So I'm curious about the body type on that one. And then the one that makes the most sense here for me is Zach Allen. He could be getting a big contract, but he's I think the discount version of Dre'Mont Jones, 6'4", 281, heavy edge that reduces inside and pass downs. Probably going to get paid about $15 million a year, but interior defensive line there make a lot of sense.
I asked you about him last week, Nick. Just looking at again, I'll just put it in the chat here real quick. Spot Rack's best values, and I click on expiring contracts, which basically means free agents. And there's Zach Allen at like 26 years old, 3rd overall. I'm like, oh, I'm interested in a guy who's 6'5", 280. And, it just brings a different
body type
skill set. You can use him at edge. You can use him at end, but it brings some beef to your run defense on the outside, Nick.
I mean, you know me, I've been screaming at that for a year now, especially since they traded Chubb. The Broncos don't have anybody right now who's a power edge type with length in the edge setting ability. It's why in my mock draft, my first pick was Zach Harrison, 6'3", 36 and a half arm length, 275 pounds. I mean, you don't have that.
Why you were so willing to ship Malik Reed out the door.
Yeah. Yep. And who ended up on the practice squad of the Steelers by the end of the year. The stats lied on that one.
I didn't see that. Goodness.
Yeah. So DWI guys closing us out here. 2 more guys did want to talk about on that free agency list though. But DWI guys saying predictions. Who is announced first player to deal the Broncos in one sleeper? There's too much smoke there. I'm going to say Kareem Hunt as the first name to the Broncos. And a sleeper, I think that this is a good transition here. Ethan, thank you so much for the $50. That's a big time for us. Really helps keep us going here. But the sleeper might be a punter. And Cliff lists 2 punters together for the Broncos here. Former Denver Bronco draft pick, the Broncos traded, Riley Dixon, who was with the Rams last year, is going to be a free agent, as well as Thomas Morstead, who has some familiarity played for the Saints punter for a number of years. So punter could be a sleeper here for the Broncos.
Oh, can you go after Marcus Davenport, or is he an Atlanta Falcon?
He's a Falcon.
Going after that edge. There was a 3rd guy in San Francisco, and now I can't remember his name. That was somebody that was interesting. I hate making predictions on when things are going to happen. I don't mind making predictions on what's going to happen, but I hate when.
Charles Omenihu, is that the name you were thinking of?
That sounds right. That sounds right, because I remember it was a guy I had trouble spelling.
He had an arrest or something that I think is still pending. He really had a good year for them. I think if he does go anywhere, it's probably to Houston to follow D'Amico Ryans. But we'll see what happens with him. But Omenihu is a very interesting player.
But I look, I just look at this list, could you bring in a veteran?
Mm-hmm.
How about Frank Clark? Could you bring in a guy who is a salary cap casualty, like Frank Clark? I mentioned it, and I mentioned him earlier this morning with the Falcons because he makes sense. If I need a productive veteran in the room who can come in and solidify things, who I'm not going to be tied to for a long time, Frank Clark makes a lot of sense to me. Would you turn your nose up at a Chief, or would you embrace a Chief to go help beat the Chiefs? For me, it'd be the latter. Talking about, the Falcons rivalry with the Saints, bring in Marcus Davenport and who's the other one? It's Onyemata. Bring those guys in. I'm not proud. just want to win ball games. And these guys it's a job for them. Really want Zach Allen, Jesse says. And again, Ethan, thank you, dude. Appreciate you coming in. Yeah, I mentioned him to you last year when I saw that. I'm like, what about this guy? And you're like, yeah, maybe. I'm like, but man, the body type is right. The productivity was pretty good. And then all of a sudden there's the link that was there. I'm like, it makes sense. It wasn't an inside thing. It was just, it makes sense for what you need and who's out there at the right price.
Yeah. We'll see how it plays out. And we didn't even talk about this that much, Scott. I made it about the list. So before we get on out of here, Dre'Mont Jones contract. We haven't heard much about the Broncos. It does seem like Dre'Mont Jones is out the door. And then you have Da'Ron Payne getting a 22.5 average annual value contract, 4 years from the Washington Commanders. That to me says Dre'Mont Jones is going to get anywhere from 18.5 to 21, I believe, out there. I know that his PFF numbers aren't great, but 3 techniques are super valuable right now. Teams are really tossing money at that. I think, and also Dre'Mont Jones is the younger of the 2 big 3 techniques on the market, him and Javon Hargrave. So I think he's going to get a massive deal.
You mentioned earlier when I was asking about Jawan Taylor and his PFF grade, and you said, they don't think much about Dre'Mont Jones either. And, I saw good things from Dre'Mont Jones. Da'Ron Payne was that guy also. He was in the 60s. He wasn't very highly ranked, and he just got a 22.5 average contract, 60 million guaranteed across 4 years. He'll see pieces of that. So 15, it'll be 18 a year that he'll end up getting. And he was tagged where Dre'Mont was not. Mm-hmm. He's out there on a free agent, and so that was an in-house deal that they were able to give him. That seems like an overpay for me for the Washington Commanders. And I will stick to my guns and say that 18, 19 a year, eating up 10% of your cap for Dre'Mont Jones is an overpay. I wouldn't want the Broncos to do that. Would I want him back? Yes. Would I think that would restrict their ability to get better in other places that they also need? Yes. So, at that kind of money, good luck, dude. Thanks for your time. I enjoy watching you. I think you're a great personality, and good luck at your next gig.
Yeah, I'm with you on that as well. And I've been a huge Dre'Mont Jones fan on here, saying that we're listing like the most valuable players in the Broncos. I've always been like, why are we not talking about Dre'Mont Jones? What he does from a versatile pass rusher brings a lot. But he's probably going to get paid. And if the Broncos are going to play the comp pick game, I think they're going to go after offensive tackle first. And regardless of the comp pick game, if they miss out on that, then I think they're going to set a hard cap at about 15 million AAV, APY, whatever acronym you want to use for the average per year. And that would protect them from the Dre'Mont Jones, losing that Dre'Mont Jones, probably 3rd round comp pick. I think them getting a right tackle is more important than trying to protect that 3rd round comp pick. But if they miss out on the top right tackles, then I think you see them put that $15 million cap on whoever they sign this cycle.
I agree. I think they've got a chance to get a comp pick for Dre'Mont.
One of the top ones.
Yeah, I agree, because I don't see them signing a free agent that's going to have the equivalent money that Dre'Mont is going to get. If you're not getting him for 15, then someone's getting him for 18 plus.
But I'm saying that
I know what I get it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I don't think what Dre'Mont's going to get on the open market, I don't think the Broncos are going to go out and get an equivalent, which means your comp pick is protected. Unless the only way that happens is if they go out and get a right tackle that they reset the market for. I don't think they'll do that.
That's the only way I think they get around it, is if there's a right tackle that they love. I think they would, especially with where they're picking this year, they'd rather solve that and not get that 3rd round comp pick. But if they don't get the right tackle, then I think it resets everything. And I don't think, let's say Dre'Mont gets 20 million per year. I think the Broncos will be safe to protect that 3rd round comp pick. And rather than, let's say, because there's a chance, let's say Dre'Mont gets 20 million per year and you sign somebody at 16.5, that 16.5 could cancel out
close.
Dre'Mont.
It's close enough.
It's too close. But if you sit there at 15 to 14, maybe that Dalton, you're canceling out the Dalton Reisner pick instead that you'd be getting for a comp pick. So if they miss out on the big right tackles, I think that then they put that cap on there to protect that Dre'Mont Jones comp pick.
I agree. And George Paton, for we've talked about the good and the bad stuff he does. He's good at that stuff. He really is. He's good with the contracts. And he's good with the draft picks as far as making sure that you've got the right draft picks. It's been a little bit hit and miss. First year was really good on the guys you took. Second year was was again hit and miss, but you were drafting late.
Yeah.
You were drafting really late. I mean, could you have gotten a better player than Nick Bonito? Is Nick Bonito a bust? I'm not ready to call Nick Bonito a bust. He was taken 60th at edge. It's like taking a quarterback in the 3rd and calling him a bust.
64th.
Yeah, that's taking a quarterback at 64. Would you call him a bust if he didn't become an immediate starter? No. And at edge, the guys that are plus edges, they go top 15.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So by that note, should we have gone in a different direction, Nick? That's the big question.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Abraham Lucas would have been pretty nice there, but I digress. What can you do at this point? But guys, we got to wrap it up. The last player on Mike Kliss's list that the last one on Kliss's list that's worth mentioning here, the 9th player that he listed was Jameis Winston, potentially coming in with the Broncos here. So Broncos, we've talked about a lot in here. Sounds like they're going to be relatively aggressive in the backup quarterback kind of market here. And we'll see what happens. And Dan coming in, what do you guys think about backup quarterback? I don't think it's going to be Brett Rippon. I think the Broncos are going to try to invest a little bit heavier than that to protect themselves, to put a little bit of internal pressure on the room, to bring in a different voice in the room and somebody to turn to if Russell Wilson struggles and the Broncos want to protect themselves from the injury guarantees after this season.
Yeah, Sean Payton's not going to hitch his wagon to Russell Wilson the way the Denver Broncos did last year. They'll bring somebody in that says, you've got some competition. We're not afraid to go with this guy if you play like you did last year.
Yep.
And I don't expect him to play like he did last year. I expect the entire offense to get better. Everybody. Literally everybody. And one of the reasons is why the bar was set low. I mean, it was a historically bad offense. It won't be hard to make them better. It just won't.
Here's a good question before we have to wrap it on up, but is there any player at all that you can think of that was a solid contributor in 2022 that could regress, be worse in 2023? Quinn Miners is a name for you?
It's about the only one that was out there. The last 4 games of Jerry Jeudy was
that's
top notch.
Yeah.
It was top notch. So, and then if he comes back, Latavius Murray was really good.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Was really good. But I'd expect him to, if he's the same guy, even close to the same guy physically, he'll be put in better situations to contribute. Mm-hmm. So, those are the ones that look, everybody else, they were so bad last year. And I'm not blaming the players on this. I've been all over Dalton Risner for 2 years. I'm not saying Dalton Risner is a bad player. I'm saying he has played badly. And that's not always on just the players. So even if Dalton Risner were to be back at left guard, I would expect left guard to be better than it was last year, even if it's the same guy.
Yeah.
And part of that reason is because it was so bad.
Yeah. So Murray was the one I thought of because he's going to be 33 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a good run there for the Broncos there for a bit, but I don't know. I just situationally with the age and whatnot, I don't know how sustainable his run was for last season from a statistical output. But guys, we're 10 minutes over. We got to go. We appreciate the heck out of you guys coming in here and joining us today. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scott Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also, make sure you're following us at BFB_pod and at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, if you're joining us on YouTube today, please subscribe, like, and share. Hopefully that new computer is coming in here for me pretty soon. It was only like a couple times today, Scott. So you're starting to get the rhythm down where I'm starting to get, you can tell, Nick's starting to fade a little bit.
It's helping keep Nick cut short. He's like, I'm going to talk shorter in case I start getting cut out here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Keeping us going. I'll step off that pedestal, but appreciate everyone coming in with the support. I see Ethan is still hanging up top there with that $50 one, but everybody who came in, Gary Leeds Palmer came in a bunch. We appreciate you. I know that I believe
RJ
Lawrence came in. Yeah. Our Montana Altitude, David Kilgore, Ray J, of course, too. Yeah, exactly. You guys are great. Everybody coming in and supporting
David
us
Kilgore
on these shows
multiple times. So yeah. If you didn't say that, I want to make sure we hit that on. Just thanks to everybody, y'all.
Yeah, appreciate you all. Scott and I will be back again tomorrow, hopefully with some news to break down. Like I said earlier, I'm going to plug my own self again here. My full mock draft, number 2.0 came out. It's Chad always, he likes those mock drafts, but they are Word. I write a lot about every single pick and player out there. So it's like a 3-page article. And I'll just give you the picks now. So Scott, you can kind of tell me if any of these names stand out to you. You'll be happy about one of them for sure. Zach Harrison Defensive end, edge rusher from Ohio State. We had our guy, Jalen Duncan, left tackle from Maryland.
If you guys get Jalen Duncan in the third, you're doing backflips and you're saving money and you've spent it somewhere else. Jalen Duncan would be an immediate upgrade at right tackle and a plug and play starter.
Yeah, I put him in there. I honestly, even if the Broncos sign a big time right tackle in free agency, then you have Duncan as your swing for 1 year, and then you're probably moving on from Garrett Bowles. That's probably how it sets up in that scenario. But I digress. Duncan, he was there. I took him. You also have Ojomo coming in there at the 4th round. Broncos get a 290-pound, 6'2" guy with 34-inch arm length that tested extremely well from Texas. Really good niche 3-tech versatile pass rusher. Round 5, I brought in a tight end, Josh Wiley from Cincinnati. And round 6, this is going to be, I'm just going to constantly pick this guy for the Broncos round 6. Evan Hull, a running back from Northwestern. Really good pass catcher, really good slasher, and was recruited by and coached by the Broncos' new running back coach. Hello, Dadoy, ding, ding, ding. That one just lines up perfectly.
Love this guy's numbers. 5'10", 210, 4.47 on the 40 with a 4.38 short shuttle, 37-inch vertical. Kid's an athlete for sure.
Yeah, and Aki Dragon says, Nick used the PFF mock draft tool. I used it 20 times to make sure that the guys that I took would be there, because I hate mock drafts where it's like, oh, I'm going to take Will Anderson with the Broncos' 70th pick. No. So I used it to just kind of like, what is actually a feasible draft for that. So go check it out. Check out all our stuff over at Mile High Huddle. Scott, I'm going to have to let you go. I know you probably got to get going too. I got to get a dog walk in. I think it's raining, but is what it is. So yeah, nothing else to say really. You guys have a great weekend or a great rest of your week. Great Monday. And God, I'm already looking forward to the weekend.
When I was in college, weekend started on Monday nights.
We had different majors, Scott. But appreciate everyone coming in here. Have a great one. We'll see you tomorrow morning again. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.